Is it possible that there is something out here that we literally haven't seen before?
Back in 2003, scientists working with Australia's National Science Agency, the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, better known as CSIRO, tagged a fully grown female great white shark off the southwest coast of Western Australia. She measured around 2.74 meters long, roughly 9 feet, placing her well within the normal size range for an adult of her species. Healthy, mature, and powerful, she was exactly the kind of specimen researchers were tracking as part of an ongoing effort to study great white populations along Australia's coastline. At the time, this program was already becoming one of the most detailed sources of data on marine predators anywhere in the world. The device attached to her was called a Pop-up Archival Transmitting Tag, or PAT tag. These tags are essential tools in ocean research. They quietly record information like depth, water temperature, and light levels at set intervals. After a programmed period, they detach, rise to the surface, and transmit all the stored data to satellites. Importantly, they don't send anything in real time. Everything is saved internally and only revealed months later. The shark, later nicknamed Alpha in documentaries that would revisit her story years later, disappeared into the vast waters of the Indian and Southern Oceans. Like other great whites, she roamed freely, diving, feeding, and traveling long distances. All the while, the tag on her dorsal fin was silently logging every movement. Then, about 4 months later, the tag resurfaced. It washed ashore near Bremer Bay, over 500 kilometers southeast of Perth. The release mechanism had activated exactly as planned. Once recovered, researchers downloaded 4 months' worth of data that would soon become one of the most astonishing records ever captured from a single tracking device. For most of that time, everything looked completely normal. The depth readings matched known great white behavior. The temperature changes aligned with the cool, temperate waters she had been swimming through. It was the kind of routine data scientists had collected from countless sharks over the years. But then, at one precise moment, everything changed. The first sign was a sudden spike in temperature. Just before the event, the tag recorded water temperatures of about 7.8 degrees Celsius, 46 degrees Fahrenheit, typical for the cold depths of the Southern Ocean. Then, within minutes, that reading jumped dramatically to around 25.5 degrees Celsius, 78 degrees Fahrenheit. That's an increase of nearly 30 degrees Fahrenheit, far warmer than the surrounding ocean could possibly be at that depth. There's only one explanation for a temperature like that in the open ocean: the inside of a large animal. And what happened next is even more shocking. If you're enjoying this kind of deep dive mystery and want more real stories from the ocean, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned, because this is just the beginning. The tag had been swallowed. What followed made things even more extraordinary. The depth data showed a rapid descent from near the surface down to about 580 meters, 1,900 feet, in a short span of time. This wasn't how a great white normally dives. The speed and pattern suggested something much bigger, something moving with clear intent after capturing prey near the surface. For hours, the tag remained at that depth, still registering the same elevated internal temperature, consistent with being inside a predator's digestive system. Eventually, the animal carrying it returned to shallower waters. At some point, the tag was expelled, either regurgitated or passed through digestion, and began drifting back toward the surface, where it would later be found. Eventually, The tag's built-in release system activated exactly as programmed. Once it surfaced, the Argos satellite network detected its location. Its long journey came to an end on a beach near Bremer Bay. What the data revealed left no room for doubt. The temperature readings were clear, the depth patterns were clear, and the length of time the tag remained at that elevated temperature, long enough for digestion to begin, was undeniable. Alpha, a healthy 9-foot adult female great white shark, had been eaten. For over a decade, this case remained largely within scientific circles. Researchers knew about it. It was discussed at conferences, referenced in studies, and added to the growing understanding of how large marine predators interact, pieced together from stomach content analysis, rare observations, and other tagging data. But it never fully reached the wider public. That changed in 2014. Australian filmmaker David Riggs brought the story to a broader audience through a Smithsonian Channel documentary titled Hunt for the Super Predator. From that film came the phrase most often linked to the case, the colossal cannibal great white shark. One of the leading scientific voices featured in the documentary was John McCosker, a senior scientist at the California Academy of Sciences and a highly respected expert on great white sharks. Based on the available evidence, McCosker and the film's central hypothesis pointed to a specific conclusion. Alpha had been killed by another great white shark, but not just any great white, a much larger one. Estimated at around 5 meters, 16 feet in length and weighing over 2 tons. According to the analysis, this massive predator likely ambushed Alpha, killed her quickly, swallowed her whole, and then descended to nearly 1,900 feet, where it spent hours digesting before returning to shallower waters. This explanation aligns with the data. However, it isn't the version that captured the public imagination. A more sensational idea took hold, that some unknown apex predator, possibly even a surviving megalodon-like creature, lurks in the deep ocean and occasionally preys on adult great whites. It's a narrative that draws attention, generates clicks, and fuels speculation, but it's not supported by the evidence. Understanding why the data rules out other possibilities is what makes the real explanation so compelling. One of the main alternatives considered was orcas. Killer whales are known predators of great white sharks. This was confirmed beyond doubt in 2017, when multiple great whites washed up on the shores of Gansby, South Africa, with their livers precisely removed. The attacks were later linked to 2 male orcas, nicknamed Port and Starboard. Their impact was so significant that local great white populations temporarily abandoned the area altogether. So yes, orcas can and do hunt great whites. Naturally, this raises the question, could orcas have been responsible for Alpha? The temperature data says no. Orcas are mammals, and like all mammals, they maintain a stable internal body temperature, around 36 to 37 degrees Celsius, 97 to 98 degrees Fahrenheit. If the tag had been inside an orca, it would have recorded something close to that range. Instead, it showed 25.5 degrees Celsius, 78 degrees Fahrenheit. That's more than 20 degrees Fahrenheit lower than an orca's core temperature. This gap is far too large to be explained by error. Simply put, the recorded temperature does not match the internal environment of any marine mammal. What it does match is the internal temperature of a large fish. Great white sharks aren't fully cold-blooded. They are what scientists call regional endotherms, meaning they can keep certain parts of their body, especially muscles and digestive organs, warmer than the surrounding water. Typically, their internal temperatures fall somewhere between 14 and 25 degrees Celsius. That range lines up almost perfectly with what the tag recorded. Then there's the depth data, which adds another critical piece to the puzzle. The tag's depth data adds another critical layer to the story. It showed a descent to nearly 580 meters, about 1,900 feet. While orcas are capable of deep dives, their typical hunting behavior doesn't involve staying at such depths for extended periods. Sustained dives like this are unusual for them. On the other hand, great white sharks have been recorded in multiple studies reaching similar depths and even going beyond. Then, there's the way the attack itself happened. Orca predation on great whites follows a very specific pattern. The now well-documented cases from Gansby revealed a precise technique. Orcas maneuver sharks into a vulnerable position and remove the liver, a nutrient-rich organ they seem to target deliberately. This leaves behind a clear forensic signature. The body often remains mostly intact, aside from the missing liver. That's not what happened to Alpha. She wasn't partially consumed. She was swallowed whole, or very close to it. The tag stayed inside the predator's body for hours, recording a prolonged digestive process. That kind of internal exposure simply doesn't match the feeding behavior of orcas. So this isn't guesswork. It's the alignment of three independent pieces of evidence: temperature, depth, and feeding pattern, all pointing in the same direction. Toward a known predator, toward a great white shark, and more specifically, toward one significantly larger than Alpha herself. This is what makes the Alpha case so important. Because once you look at the data honestly, there's no need to invoke unknown creatures or prehistoric survivors, no hidden giants lurking in the deep. The largest verified great white sharks reach around 6 meters, about 20 feet, with some reliably measured individuals slightly exceeding that. The estimated 16-foot predator responsible for Alpha's death fits comfortably within that known size range. No mystery species required. We already know sharks of that size exist. One of the most famous is Deep Blue, a massive great white, over 20 feet long, documented near Mexico's Guadalupe Island. She's been filmed, measured, and confirmed. Rare, but very real, and that's the key. The Alpha case suggests that a shark in that size range encountered a 9-foot female of its own kind and killed her in a single attack. Then it ate her. Same species, one just much bigger. It likely happened deep below the surface, in cold, dark water where no human could see it. And despite years of monitoring in Western Australia, no cameras, no sensors, and no observers caught it. Except one, the tag. Months later, it washed ashore, carrying the only evidence this event ever happened. Without it, Alpha would have simply vanished, like so many tagged sharks before her. But this time, the data came back, and it changed everything. Because what it revealed is simple, but powerful. Great white sharks sometimes hunt each other. Scientists already knew juveniles could fall victim to larger individuals, but Alpha proved something new. This behavior can extend to fully grown adults. She wasn't small, she wasn't weak. She was a 9-foot apex predator, and still, she became prey. This is the first recorded case of a tagged adult great white being eaten. The next major example wouldn't come until the 2017 orca attacks in South Africa. So the question is, how often does this really happen? We don't know yet. But what we do know is this: even the ocean's most feared predator isn't always at the top. Sometimes, the real threat is its own kind. Are such events truly rare, or are they simply difficult to observe? The answer is likely a mix of both. Encounters like this happen in vast, remote ocean spaces, often at depth, with no witnesses except the occasional tracking device. Even with modern technology, capturing direct evidence of these moments is incredibly challenging. But what the data does not suggest is the involvement of an unknown species. Everything recorded in the alpha case fits within what we already understand about great white sharks, their size range, their physiology, and their behavior at the extreme end of their capabilities. There's no need to introduce a hidden predator to explain it. This is where a basic scientific principle comes into play. The simplest explanation, supported by evidence, is usually the correct one. In this case, that explanation is another great white. To argue otherwise, by invoking something like a surviving megalodon or an undiscovered deep-sea superpredator, requires adding an entirely new, unverified species to explain data that already makes sense on its own. And that's where the popular narrative starts to fall apart. Megalodon, scientifically known as Otodus megalodon, was absolutely real. Its existence is backed by a vast fossil record, including enormous teeth found in coastal deposits around the world. But it went extinct around 3.6 million years ago, at the end of the Pliocene epoch. This isn't speculation. It's supported by multiple lines of evidence: global fossil distribution, isotopic analysis, and the complete disappearance of megalodon remains from younger geological layers. There's another important point, often misunderstood. Megalodon wasn't a deep-sea creature. Fossil evidence places it in warm, shallow coastal environments, where it hunted large marine mammals like early whales. The idea that it retreated into the deep ocean and survives there today flips the biology completely. The deep ocean is cold and relatively low in available energy. It supports specialized predators like sleeper sharks, six-gill sharks, and certain squid species, but nothing even remotely close to the size of a megalodon. In fact, the largest known deep-sea predatory fish are dramatically smaller. There's no ecological space for a megalodon-sized hunter to survive undetected. No consistent food source, no supporting evidence, no bite marks on whale carcasses, no unexplained population declines in large prey, no physical remains washing ashore. Nothing. It's true that much of the ocean remains unexplored. Around 80% of the seafloor hasn't been mapped in high detail, and only a small fraction of the ocean has been directly observed by humans or submersibles. And yes, new species are still being discovered, but discoveries happen within biological limits, not in the form of massive, ecosystem-dominating predators leaving no trace. The alpha case doesn't point to something unknown. It points to something we already know, just operating at a level we rarely get to witness. A great white shark hunting another great white shark in the depths of an ocean where almost everything goes unseen. Most newly discovered marine species today are tiny, microbes, small invertebrates, or modest deep-sea fish. Occasionally, scientists reclassify known animals like whales, but entirely new large apex predators. That hasn't happened in decades. The last major discovery was the megamouth shark in 1976. And even that isn't a hunter, but a filter feeder. This pattern matters. It shows that the unknown parts of the ocean are hiding small life, not massive, undiscovered super predators. The idea of a megalodon-like creature still roaming the depths simply isn't supported by how modern discoveries actually unfold. What the alpha case really reveals is far more compelling. Great white sharks don't just dominate the ocean. They sometimes prey on each other. Large individuals at the upper end of their size range, can and do hunt smaller adults. These events happen deep below the surface, far beyond human visibility, and almost always go unnoticed unless a tagged shark records it. That's exactly what happened with Alpha: a sudden temperature spike, a rapid dive to nearly 580 meters, hours spent inside a predator's body, then release, resurfacing, and finally, weeks later, the tag washing ashore with the only record of what occurred. How often does this happen? We don't yet know. Alpha is just one confirmed case. Others, like the orca attacks in South Africa, show different predators entirely. Ongoing tagging programs around the world are slowly building a clearer picture, but for now, the frequency remains uncertain. What is clear, though, is the implication. If larger great whites regularly prey on smaller ones, it affects how we understand their population, lifespan, and survival rates. It reshapes the biology of the species itself, and it challenges the myth. Popular culture often paints the great white as the ultimate apex predator, untouchable, unmatched. But the truth is more complex. Within their own species, there's a hierarchy. A 9-foot great white may be a deadly hunter to almost everything else in the ocean, but it's not at the top of its own kind. That position belongs to the rare giants, 20-foot individuals that on occasion treat smaller sharks the same way those sharks treat seals. In that sense, great whites are both predator and prey, and that reality is far more fascinating and far more real than any story about surviving prehistoric monsters. What remains is a rare record of something no human ever witnessed: an encounter between two members of the same apex predator species in the cold waters off southwestern Australia. The 9-foot female carrying the tag didn't survive. The predator that consumed her, almost certainly a much larger female, based on known size differences, did. The tag became the only silent witness. 4 months later, it washed ashore near Bremer Bay, carrying with it a complete record of the event: the sudden temperature rise, the deep descent, and the timeline of digestion. Together, these details form the first full scientific record of one adult great white being eaten by another. The 2014 documentary that popularized the case introduced the phrase "colossal cannibal great white." Some criticized it as sensational. Others argued it simply reflected the reality shown by the data. Both views have some truth. The evidence itself is solid. It strongly supports the conclusion that the predator was another great white, around 16 feet long, a size well within the known range of the species, especially when compared to documented giants like Deep Blue. What doesn't hold up is the more dramatic narrative that followed. The idea of an unknown deep-sea predator, something like a living megalodon. The data doesn't support that. Every measurable detail aligns with a known species behaving at the extreme end of its capabilities. The real mystery isn't what killed Alpha, it's how often this kind of event happens and what it means for great white populations worldwide, because the implication is striking. Even the ocean's most feared predator isn't always at the top. Somewhere in the vast ocean, larger great whites exist, rare, powerful individuals capable of hunting their own kind. The Alpha case is just one recorded instance. There are likely many more we've never seen. The deep ocean doesn't hide unknown monsters. It hides familiar ones, acting in ways we're only beginning to understand. One shark was 9 feet long. The one that ate her was twice that size.